Hi, it's Janet Fitch, and if this is Wednesday, it must be Writing Wednesday, which I do at noon every Wednesday Pacific and 3 Eastern. I answer your writing questions. If you put your questions in the comment box. If you think of things ahead of time, feel free to write to me through my website, janetfitchwrites.com. And I will design a Writing Wednesday around your question. So today I'm coming to you from Canada, where I've come and I've brought my first draft of my novel. And I thought that would be a very good topic for today, is editing the first draft of your novel. It starts with a printout. I print out a coherent draft and 3-hole punch and put it in a ring binder. I think any of you who've had me as a teacher know that I'm crazy about a 3-ring binder because I'm a very physical person and I need to be able to handle the pages. I can't, for some reason, the chapters in my computer just don't, I can't move them around in my mind. It's too abstract. So I print it out, and I print it out 2-sided because it's already very long as it is. Hi, Wendy. Hi, Heidi. So this is a first draft of a novel. Right there. There's probably about 700 pages here, of which I am not going to use. Hi, MJ. Well, I'm not going to use 700 pages. I'm not even done yet. My writer mode is I as a writer, I create characters and scenes, relationships, very, very fluidly. I'm like Jiffy Pop popcorn, just create, lots of characters, lots of relationships, lots of cool things. I just am creating en masse. But not all of this is going to stay in the novel because a novel is about something. And we've talked a little bit about that. So I printed out all of my, everything I have for the first draft. And what you'll find when you print out is often you will be having to choose between multiple versions of a scene. It looks like you have duplicates. You have things in third person, first person, where Calendula, triumphs, and one where she fails, and you have to decide between the various versions of a scene which one you're going to work with. So you pick one. You pick the one you like the best. And, so you print out 3-hole punch, put it in the 3-ring binder. And so what I did was I brought my massive first draft where I picked things. And what you'll find, what I needed to do was sit down somewhere quiet, undisturbed, and read the whole thing. So I've come up here to Canada, staying at a friend's house, and just reading the whole draft. And it takes a long time because I make notes all over it. I'm going to turn this around so you can see what that looks like. So there's a page, that I'm on right now. That's what it looks like. So I read that first draft, and I go over my immediate feelings about it. There's some pages that are just going to come out. So that's what it looks like. I do not want to do that kind of work on the computer. I don't see it as well on the computer as I do when I'm reading it. So I've already done some editing by picking which versions of scenes, winnowing down to the winners and getting them into the notebook. Now I'll feel more comfortable forever because even if my computer crashes, I have a hard copy. But why now? I'm not really to the end of the first draft. I have all this material, and what happens is I get to the end, towards the end of the first draft, trying to pull the story together, trying to get a good ending for it. And what happens is, at this stage in the editing, in the writing process, you start to realize what your novel is about. Because you cannot write an ending until you know what the hell this thing was about. I can create related characters and related events until the cows come home. But I'm not going to get a dramatic, powerful ending unless I know what the book was about. And then my job, I have a couple of jobs with this edit. The first of which is to get rid of everything that's not in some way related to the central problem or the central issue or the, what is the novel about? If a scene or a sequence or a subplot does not relate to what that thing is, what that novel is about, even if it's tangentially, even if it's, comments on in some way, I'm taking it out. I'm putting it at the end. So I've already taken out like 160 pages out of this thing of subplot that just has no bearing that I can see yet on the central problems of the novel. So I've pulled that much out already. I'm on page, like 550 at the moment, with another, 200 to go or something. So I'm pulling out, and I might bring these people back. I might bring those relationships back, but I will bring them back with the knowledge of what they are serving, how they are serving the novel, not just my husband, who's also a writer, as some of you know, calls it the darling toddler effect, where you put your kids, drawing on the fridge, and when you look at it, you think of all the work that went into raising that child to the point that they're creating this kind of stuff. Whereas somebody else just sees a scrawl on the fridge. They don't see the child. They don't see the work. And we also, with our work, developed this precious toddler effect, where we know how hard that was to write. We know the excitement that it took to write that section of your book. But the reader is only going to see what effect it has on the overall book. So I know that these sections are interesting in and of themselves. The characters are winning, they're fabulous, but when I try to wrap it up, when I'm trying to pull the cord, at the neck to close off the story, I see that there's too much to tie off. There's unrelated themes that emerged from these other relationships that I don't want to tie up. I don't need to tie up. So I take them out, and I'm putting those sections at the end, and then I can work them back in as needed. The other thing I'm working on in this draft, the first draft, edit. So I've got a big bunch of my material laid out. Now I'm starting to see the shape of the book, and now it's time to raise the Titanic, bring it into consciousness, see how it hangs together, what kind of a shape is it? So the job of the edit of the first draft, which becomes the second draft, is the dramatics. Is it moving forward scene and on the scene and story level? So I'm strengthening the core of the book, what it's about, winnowing out what it isn't about, and putting that at the end if I want to use it and can find places for it, groovy, And the other thing I'm doing is strengthening the voice of the novel, because I do have a character who is very strong, a strong voice, and is crowding out my protagonist. And this is a matter of, if you look in former Writing Wednesdays, or if you've taken Scene and Story with me, you know that there's something called character orchestration, which is how the characters play off of each other. This is the dramatics of your book. And you don't want one character, especially the antagonist, to be so amazing that they overshadow the protagonist. The protagonist just doesn't have a chance to break through. That it's all about how they balance against each other. So for the moment, I'm either taking that second, the antagonist, I'm taking her point of view chapters, either taking them out or moving them into the voice of the protagonist and strengthening the protagonist's voice. And then if I want to bring back that, that point of view, the antagonist point of view chapters, which, they were every once in a while, it wasn't alternating, but I will have strengthened the protagonist to the point that she will not be overshadowed by the antagonist. So this is how we balance. So first draft edit is about sculpting your story, orchestrating, more fine-tuning the orchestration between the characters, strengthening the voice. I need to do that. The book cried out for that. And, really thinking about what the book is about. And I'm hoping that by the time I'm back home, I will have been away for, a while, because this is a driving trip. We're hitting the road. That I'll be ready to sit down and write the second draft from the notes that I've been making now. I also like having the hard copy, because when I was finished the first draft of White Oleander, my computer died. And I had to retype it from my first draft notes, from my printed out draft and the notes. And I think it improved the book that I had to type it all over again. It really enabled me to re-examine every word, every sentence, just pulled it together, little more tightly. So I was wondering if you have any questions about this process of first draft editing. I'm open to your questions, comments, problems you're having shaping your book. Getting to just getting away and having a chance to read the whole thing. Because I don't know, when I'm writing it, I'm just piling up the pages. I do not go back to square one and start reading it again. I need to have like a really, not necessarily complete draft, because how can you get a complete draft when you don't know what it's about? You have to start. But when I have a bulk, if I have 700 pages, it's time to sit down and read the whole thing. and see how I can do it. So Malika asks, are you going to retype this book? I don't know. I don't know. Probably I'll use the material I have and just edit it once, now that I have all those notes. But there's still stuff to be written. Once I pulled out all that material that doesn't feed the book, then there are things that need to be put in. So I just write TK, scene with characters, at the whatever cafeteria, or at the zoo, or the doctor. I can see what needs to be rewritten. So there's going to be a lot of rewrite, but probably won't. I'm not sure. That's a good question. See how that feels. What else can I tell you? I mean, I do advise doing it. It's one of the things about when people wrote by hand, they would have it typed. A lot of long-suffering wives had that job. A lot of work for typists. They would type it up, and then you'd get it again, and then you'd go over it again, and then somebody would do it. Here's a question. Let's see, Heidi. Editing out backstory. Any advice in keeping yourself from getting bogged down in backstory? I come up with ideas about character development as I write, and it puts me in the past, how they were raised, etc. Heidi, the interesting thing about this is that the character backstory is something you need to know as the writer. And just know that what you write about their backstory might not need to be in the book. It might not need to be of any interest to the reader. It's of interest to you as you are thinking about your character, how they would behave, why they are the way they are. I put in backstory on a needs-to-know basis. What the reader needs to know to understand this scene. That's the backstory I'll use. I'm not going to be looking to put in a chunk of backstory and looking for a place to put it. It's more what naturally arises as a response to what's going on in the front story. So I even now I'm taking out backstory. I took out all the backstory and threw it in the back. And then I know I need it, but I haven't, I've got to wait until the place it emerges naturally. Why does my character need to think about X? What brings that to mind? And what will it explicate in the present? So, if you need to put in backstory, having them clean out a closet and find something, it needs to be spurred by something in the present scene. And its son needs to know, because you want the reader to be interested and want to know more, rather than putting too much information that they don't need and then they start backing off. It's like somebody telling you a story and then going on more than we need to know. It's like, why, how'd you bash your car? I ran into a post because I was drunk. That's the short form. I ran into the post because, my girlfriend dumped me and I was really sad and I drank a bunch of margaritas and I ran into the post, is a larger version. When you start getting into how your mother abandoned you and blah, 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 it's like sometimes that's a little much for the casual questioner. So you'll have to figure out how much your reader needs to know at any one point, because you can always return to it. I talk a lot about Under the Volcano, one of my very favorite books. And, he develops the story of the divorce in Oaxaca just by putting in a line saying, last time he saw her was in Oaxaca. And then, 20 pages later, he says, Oaxaca was the saddest word. And then you're like leaning forward. Why is Oaxaca the saddest word? And then maybe 50 pages later, you get a little taste of, oh, that was their divorce. So he builds your interest in the backstory rather than just laying it on you. Let's see. How do you decide what to put into scene or summary at this stage? MJ asks. Summary or narrative compresses time. It lets you move ahead. You can move ahead in a couple of sentences. She returned to the island when the leaves were turning red. We don't have to live through the summer with her, because that's not what the scene's about. It just gets you, it compresses time, and you can get on with the scene, which is about the conflict, between characters in the moment. So at this time, it's more, for me, it's more questioning the scene and making sure, what is this scene about? Make sure it's not about two different things or three different things. If you think, what's the scene about? Is it about, Johnny's, crush on his mom? Is it about his anger at Joseph for not paying him? Is it his, wishing he had a dog or something? And if you think it's about all three things, it isn't. That's where your dramatics, it's like, that's the machine, that's the winches and cranes and cogs, and the naked storytelling machine is a scene needs to be about something, in one thing. So rather than deciding what scene and what summary, summary is always what gets you into the scene. The scene is the live thing where people are in conflict with each other, and something happens. They can't go back the way they were before. It doesn't reset. And it's about one thing. So I'm more working on scenes to make sure that the dramatics are clear rather than deciding what to compress. I already know what to compress. It's when nothing's happening, you compress that time to get to your place where a character is coming into conflict. Let's see what we have here. Do you do titles while writing? Malika asks. Oh yeah, I'm looking for a title for this. The fact that I don't like my working title, really hate my working title. I'm watching and seeing if I can find something. I found something, but I don't know that it really applies. I'm not quite sure. So I'm always watching for it, and I might end up just having to, resort to poetry, Shakespeare, and looking for titles, rock and roll. So let's see. Wendy asked a question. How do you know you're done with the first draft? First draft is just a frickin' mess. You're never really done with it. You just have a huge amount of paper, or, a huge amount of words. Once you're 700 pages and you're trying to close it out and you can't even imagine how it's going to end, that's sort of the end of the first draft. You've gone as far as you can. You have a lot of material, book length in amount of material, but the end just still hasn't materialized because you don't know what it's about. That's the time that I go back, and that's what I'm doing now, is I'm reading the whole draft and looking for an ending, looking for how this is going to wrap up. What am I saying about this stuff? What does it mean? What's it for? What's it about? And then once there is Wendy says, how do you know when you're done with the first draft? I wrote a full draft during novel writing month, but not sure it's time to move to draft 2. I don't outline or storyboard, so I don't see the holes. Yeah, a full draft in a month, my guess is that you are not quite done with your first draft. I mean, a month doesn't really take you all the way through unless it's very short, more like a novella. But when you feel it's done or getting close to it, as far as the story goes, that's the time. There's this, what people don't understand, it's not first draft, second draft, etc. It's first draft, and then reading through the first draft and making notes for the second draft. That's a whole piece in itself. And I think that's probably, if you feel like you've told the story, in a month, you definitely need to read it and see, did you tell the story? Are there chapters missing? I mean, I cannot see writing first draft in a month. I just see it like a lot of writing. So you might look, and it might be a good time to read it and make notes and what isn't there. See, in my case, it's been a couple of years since I've written the beginning chapters. So I'm reading this as if I've never seen it before. Whereas I don't know how long it's been sitting that you haven't been in there. But it's a good time to read it and go, what is missing? Are the scenes realized? Are they all about something? What is it about? What are the issues that you're handling in this? And then does your ending, were you able to pull it together with an ending? So you go through, you make your notes, and then you go on to second draft. Let's see what we have here. Let's see, there's another one. How do you decide what to put into scene or summary? Yeah. Put it into scene if you see a scene. And then you can always get rid of it if nothing happens, nothing you needed happened in that scene. You can always put it in a summary. If it just led to something else and it's really the something else that you need, you can, start thinking in terms of entrances and exits problem. A lot of people do a lot of throat clearing before they start the real scene. And if that's what you do, just know that that's what you do and be willing to cut that and do that in narrative instead. You don't have to come over to Shirley's house and have your coffee and have your, muffin and, settle in and play with the dogs, that you can just do that in narrative. I came over, we had coffee, her dogs were muddy and rambunctious, and then start your scene. Let's see what else. I have a new one. Here we go. Jeffrey. Hi, Jeffrey. Wanted to know if you've read the fan fiction of my books. No, I have not read the fan fiction of my books. I think it's very, it'd be kind of strange. It might be interesting, but also kind of strange to read. You know, it's like finding somebody wearing your clothes, you know, walking around, you know, with your gestures. And I don't know whether it would be interesting or kind of upsetting, but I'd be interested sometime in seeing fan fiction. So Cassandra, hi Cassandra, she writes, I now do ghostwriting for memoirs, and you're describing this shaping process is valuable and hard to describe to clients. They have inexperienced ideas of how writing a book should go. Yeah. And I often have to convince them that there is not a set formula way that they can understand why taking things out, making big edits, doesn't mean you made a mistake, but is the process of writing and editing. Yeah, you know, you can't, I mean, nobody takes down a story and it just comes out first draft, beautiful, perfect, and off you go. You know, the shaping process is part, you create and then you sculpt, and you create and then you sculpt. And it's a, you know, editing is also creating in its way. But it's sharpening what the book is and what it isn't. I mean, everybody has read a book that just didn't seem to know what it was and kind of wander around, and then had an ending that didn't really relate to the content of the story. You know, that's somebody who has not gone through this process of asking themselves, what is this about? And then sculpting it to highlight what it's about. It has to be done. And it's something that we have the precious toddler effect often, you know, that the first draft took us so long and took so much imagination in our minds. You know, we see not the thing on the page, but the thing in our minds. And it's like, oh, you want me to write another draft? You know, I'll ruin it. It's like, yeah, no, you know, it'll be skeletal for a while as you strip out the unnecessary. And I'm not saying throw it out. I put it at the end, you know, the end of my 3-ring binder here. And if I want it later, it's right there. But usually I find I don't need it once I've taken it out. Maybe I'll need it. I don't know. Every book, you're a beginner with every book. It's like you're remaking the materials. It's like you're remaking the tools every time you write a new book. You have to create new tools to create that work. You really are a beginner. So even the experience of having written other books doesn't save you. It doesn't, you don't get to skip steps because you've done this before. Every time is new. The problems are always new. The issues are always new. You know, the characters are new. The situation is new. And you're always back to figuring out the way this book needs to be written. But having written before, I know that I get to this point, and I know that I need to go through, read the whole thing, and decide what it's about. Gone are the days where Malcolm Cowley is your editor, and he reads it and he goes, "Why, Tom Wolfe, this is what it's about. Now you need to go back and you know, resculpt this." You know, if you're lucky, you get an editor like that, or you get an agent like that. But that's not the literary world that we live in. This is a very DIY, you know, you have to learn to edit yourself for a while. And whatever you do, just asking yourself those questions and handling those scenes and asking yourself, what is this about? What is the book about? And how does this scene fit in with what you're trying to do with the book? Yeah, so that so definitely, tell Cassandra, definitely tell your clients that this is just par for the course, that writing is not, it's not something that is born out of, Zeus's forehead like Athena. It's something that you get in there with a shovel, and you're shoveling away, and you're sculpting, and you're pulling stuff out of the ground, and you're dusting it off, and you're deciding where to put the furniture, and are you falling over the furniture? Just all those questions. When I started writing, I had no idea that people wrote in drafts. I thought it just came right off the pen so beautifully, maybe for somebody, but very, very few writers in the history of the world have written that way. So Ruthie has a question. Do you find readers nowadays are patient enough to wait for a bigger reveal? I feel like readers are pick up clues and hints. They watch mysteries, they watch things that treat them with respect and treat them like intelligent people. And if you tease them enough, not in a heavy-handed way, in a light way, like Oaxaca was the saddest word, readers will, if they have confidence in you, they will wait for it to be revealed. I mean, they'll wait for pages and chapters, and depending on how big that hook is. It's like Dostoevsky. What did they say? That he tied a girl to the tracks in the first 50 pages of every book that he wrote, so that you'll wait through all this stuff to get back to like who killed the father, which of the brothers killed the father. And people will wait. It's like I have a situation in my book where I think people will wait to find out what the hell happened here. If I get to the end of the second draft and feel like, I've laid the traps as well as I can, and I won't call them traps, but if I've kind of naturally placed the keys, I think I have confidence that the reader will pick them up. The trick is not to look like you're manipulating the story. The story needs to look like it's emerging organically. I'm reading, some of you who were here last week, I'm reading Steinbeck's Journey of a Novel, talking about writing East of Eden. And it's every day he's writing, and then he's writing East of Eden. And one of the things he said that I really liked was that he told his editor that he wanted to write very slowly, because if you write fast, then the strings of the warp, when you weave, you have the long strings that are attached to the loom, and then you work the weft through, or the warp, or whatever it is, the warp and the weft. So you work the weft through back and forth, but the strings are the warp, the structure of the novel. And he said, if I work too fast, they'll see the strings. I don't want them to see the strings. I want them to feel like this is just an organic, casual unfolding of a story, and then catch those clues, catch those keys, realize that there is a deep structure to this thing, but not to give it away. So to plant secrets, it's like planting secrets, and you're just going to hint at them for a while. So I say always trust your reader, that they're gonna. My old teacher Kate Braverman said, imagine the 5 smartest people you know reading the book. They're gonna catch it. They are gonna catch it. And then when you read it, in subsequent drafts, or somebody else reads it and says, I don't get it. There's something about knowing that there's something there, not quite getting it, and then 3 chapters later, the writer picks it up again and tells you more. It's like there's a satisfaction of with that beyond just reading, because you've intuited something that turned out to be right. So you're buying even closer into the novel. You're more involved. I think that's a really fun part of it. What else can I tell you? So anyway, this is what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks, is reading this and writing notes and really hitting the voice of the novel, which hadn't been fully developed yet. This voice is a harsher voice than I usually use. And it's a character who I've been softening her, because the antagonist is a tough nut and funny. And I've been softening her. I've been making her more compassionate, more, what do they call it, emotionally intelligent. And she really isn't. She's really a tough person. And I'm working on that voice. It's very interesting. So Heidi says, do you try to stay within a certain word count? Oh my God, I try, but I'm such a maximalist, I like to see the details. I like to create a world, and a certain word count. I mean, my God, if I could keep this book to 450 pages, I would love that. I don't know how many words that is. But I'm always aware of how big a book it is. And, how big do I want it to be? When you picture your book in your hand, do you feel that it's a big book? I mean, God, Steinbeck knew that East of Eden was going to be a big book, physically big. He wanted it to be a big epic of family, on the Melvillian scale. He felt that. When I was writing Marina M. and Chimes of Lost Cathedral, I wanted them to be big, luxurious, sensual books that you really could just enter into. I knew the scale would be big. I wanted it. It felt right for the story. This story I would like to be kind of a medium-sized book. So, if I can come in at 400 pages, 450, book length, book pages, which I don't know how many pages that is in manuscript. I would like that. So 700 manuscript pages is not what I want to see. But then it is what it is. If I'm satisfied with the book and I feel that all parts are necessary and not the precious toddler problem, but that they really are necessary, I'm going to let it be. And then they'll come and they'll tell me I have to take 100 pages out. And then Elroy said that he needed to take 100 pages out of one of his early books, and he said he just took out all the verbs. So that's a way to go, rather than taking chapters out. You just take out a few words every sentence, and you end up saving some. But with him, it made the voice. It made his voice. In this book, it's making actually the tightening process of cutting because of her tone, because of her voice the voice of the book is changing. I'm cutting a lot of the detail that I usually would put in. It's just not quite suiting the lyrical tone that I started with is not suiting this character. She's a little rougher and tougher. And so I have a challenge. I have a voice challenge with this book. And I'm looking forward to it. So Wendy says, I'm reading Anna Karenina, and it's quite the journey. Can't imagine writing them for so long. Yeah, Anna Karenina, he wrote it in 3 years. He didn't. It didn't take him a huge amount of time to write that. 3, maybe 4 years. But one thing, if you're writing a long book like that, to note that his chapters were very short. And if you look at Marina M. and Chimes of Lost Cathedral, the chapters were very short, because I feel like the longer the book, the shorter the chapters should be, so that the reader feels that they're making progress. Long chapters in long books, the reader just despairs that they're ever going to get through it. So keeping those chapters short. I mean, why they did it in the 19th century is people read aloud. Somebody would be, the family would be together. They would be knitting, they would be whittling, building furniture, whatever the hell they did. And somebody would be reading a chapter aloud. So for everybody's entertainment. So, you'd read a chapter, a short chapter, and then it would be time to go to bed. So they did that instead of TV. So think about, the length of chapters, how languorous, how brisk, how crisp, short, long affects the reader's experience. Wendy says, I feel like Tolstoy tricked me. Yeah, Wendy, if you get a chance, read Creating Anna Karenina. I did a review in the Los Angeles Review of Books on it, and it was just fascinating. So you might want to check that out. A guy named Bill Blaisdell. What else can I answer you about this editing process? People are they keep thinking editing means a certain thing. Do you think editing means a certain thing? Do you have a picture of what that is? Editing can be very creative. You're allowed to change everything and anything up to the last moment. So, people think that the creative stuff is writing it and then the editing is the slog. But in fact, editing is also creative. But it's creative with more consciousness. Creating that first draft is pure unconsciousness, at least for some of us. For me, it is. Let's just say that. For me, it's purely unconscious, the first draft, creating all that material. And then the editor comes is more intellectual. And when I'm editing, I'm thinking, does this work? Is the little machine working? Why not? Where can I increase clarity? Where can I don't mean clarity like more precise description or something. I mean clarity of theme. Like, what the hell is it about? The more clear in the editing, I become clearer about what it's about. And then I have a better criterion for whether things stay or go, or how to shape them. What happens in this scene that moves me along in the story of blah, blah, blah. What else can I tell you? That question of retyping it, I don't know. Now I'm thinking. So Heidi asks, do you have certain people you go to for helpful feedback? Other writers? Yeah, I do. I have a writers group who has seen all of this and different scenes in umpteen variations. So these are people who I can make a change, eliminate something, and hear, oh my God, don't get rid of him. I loved him. Well, I might get rid of him anyway. But the fact that they love the precious toddler that I'm cutting, makes me put it to the back, I'm aware I'll probably be knitting it back together later on. So anyway, have this writers group. We've worked together for a long time. And then, but they have seen it and seen it and seen it. I don't want to, I have to know that there's a certain level of remembering instead of reading. So you're always thinking in terms of clean readers, which means people who've not seen it before. I have a friend who always reads my last draft. She's always my first person to read the completed book. She's not a writer, she's an artist, but she's an incredible reader. And she has read the fresh final of White Oleander, of Paint It Black, and of the 2 Russian novels. And this one too. She will read this when it's done, or when I think it's done. And the helpful feedback I want from her is, where were you bored? Where did you put it down? Put your honest reaction on every page. Anytime you feel something like boring, just put boring in the margin where you're bored. Where did you put it down to make a sandwich? Where did you put it down for the night? If there's things you like, just put a check by it, so you can see the person's emotional journey, what it's like to read that book and where it sags. I probably will have somebody read a full draft before that person. I'll find, I can think of another few people that are clean readers, and they don't have to be writers. Writers are usually more open to doing it because you can also do it for them. But they don't have to be writers. There are a tremendous number of really good readers who can just tell you what their reaction are. I don't get why, why Timmy does this in chapter 20. I don't believe it. I don't get it. But they have to be very honest people. So not crabby people, but people who will tell you the truth. The people who will tell you that your tag is sticking up or that you have spinach in your teeth. It's basically what you're looking for. Heidi says, is there an online writing group or forum you would suggest? I don't know what's out there. When I teach online, we break the participants into groups, and they start working with each other. And I think many of them have gone on to work together online after the class. It's a good way to go if you're taking an online class. See who's available to work, whose work you liked, whose thinking you liked, and see if they want to continue. Online writing groups or forums. Yeah, it's usually people you've taken class with, or been in a conference with or something like that. Otherwise, I'm not sure. People do NaNoWriMo, which is in November, and I think that there are groups of people who have done that in your town, which would make a nice start for an online writing group. If anybody else has any ideas, Writing Wednesday people, go ahead and speak up, because there's a good book about forming a writers group, which is what I did, rather than waiting to join a group that's already formed. I looked around at writers who I respected who were struggling, or I didn't even know they were struggling. I was struggling with a second novel, and I looked around for other people who had second novels and asked them, would you be interested in working together? And some of them wanted to. So that's how we started. Alrighty. Well, if there are no other questions, I am going to here's one. There's Wednesday edition that's online from the San Francisco Writers Workshop, says Malika. Well, that's a good thing to know. Check that out, Wednesday edition, San Francisco Writers Workshop. And Wendy's in one through Writers at Work in LA, which is Terry Wolverton, who's a wonderful poet, a wonderful writer, teaching. So that's cool. Yeah, just about every class that you would take, there will be people that you're interested in working with afterwards. All right, well, that is working on editing the first draft. So that's the pause that refreshes between first and second draft, gives you your direction, where to go next, what your book still needs, the shaping that you can do, and pulling out stuff that doesn't fit. That's very helpful. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you next week for Writing Wednesday. Okay, bye.